Welcome to the Intuitive Therapist Podcast with Janis R. Cohen, therapist, clairvoyant, empath, and medium. Listen in as she takes a no-nonsense deep dive into real human struggles and how to resolve them. Janis will share channeled information from her spirit guide team, as well as the angels and archangels, to help you master your emotional, physical, financial, and spiritual destiny. And now, Janis R. Cohen.
Hey y'all, this is Janis Cohen, the Intuitive Therapist here on the Intuitive Therapist Podcast. Hey, I'm sorry about not getting last week's episode out to you. It was a week for sure, and I was just bombarded. What can I say? I know y'all have experienced that too. But I'm back on track, and I'm here to talk about an important topic for today: how to protect yourself and still remain open to people. To the right people. We've all done it. We've all shut people out of our lives because we felt hurt, disappointed for the last time, betrayed, embarrassed, abused, violated, or any other reason that you've used to justify it. And some people are very quick to do it. The person does something once and they're done. And yeah, of course, that's along a spectrum of offensive behavior. Some people do it very quickly. Have you ever done that? I'm curious. If so, think about what happened and why. More importantly, for sure, why. I don't know about you, but I've always been somebody who has held on to people longer than I should have. And while I've gotten better at not doing that, my nature is to be very loyal until I get to a certain point, until I get pushed to a certain point, or allow myself to get pushed to a certain point. And it takes me a long time, most times, to reach that certain point. But once I'm there, the door is closed for good. And what I realized finally after so many years, decades really, is that this is all part of the process, right? For the most part, the process in quotes. And over time, I've learned that people serve their purpose in my life. I don't mean to sound shallow, but it's just the truth. We all serve purposes in each other's lives, and then our connection is done. And so, therefore, let's sever it. It's not, I know, like I said, I know it sounds cold, but it really isn't. If you understand how life works, we're all serving purposes for other people, and each of us is student and teacher all at the same time, in thousands of moments and all throughout our lifetime. So the times that you cut others out of your life may have been right on time, or in other cases, prematurely, because you really needed to stay exposed to them a little bit longer to learn what you needed to learn from them. So yes, this is a case-by-case scenario, but if you're into personal growth at all, then you know, or at least I hope you know by now, that people are in your life for a reason, to show you something about yourself. Period, exclamation mark. And if that reason hurts you, the byproduct of that hurt, the possible byproduct, by the way, is growth. If you seize the opportunity to use it as that. But you could stay pissed, you could stay hurt, you could stay all upset if you want. But the only person that hurts is really you. You're the only one that gets damaged by holding on to that, right? So the other person moves on with their life, and most often unaware and guilt-free, right? The burden of pain that you carry belongs only to you. And while closure is longed for by many of us in many instances, nobody owes you a thing. It's your job to clean up your side of the street when your feelings have been provoked, tested, ignited. And it's your job to fix what's hurting inside of you. And when you do, you no longer call in the repeated behavior of others to teach you the same lesson. Make sense? So, looking back, when you've cut people out of your life, ask yourself, what have I learned about myself from this? I don't know if you really often ever ask yourself that, but it's a great question. It's like the question that I really encourage you to use, what have I learned from this about me? What do I need to learn if I haven't taken the time to see what I need to shore up in myself? You can do this going back to different things in your life. So even if all you did was feel hurt and pissed and all of that, go back to those experiences and say, what's in it for me? You'll know that you've mastered that lesson when people with similar behaviors stop showing up. It's like you push the button and poof, lesson done. On to the next one. So, yeah, we shut people out because they have had bad behaviors towards us. However, if you want to define what bad behavior is, let's do that. But the act of shutting out shouldn't stop there, right? Take a step further. Go within. Take the time to figure out what triggered you, what was triggered inside of you. That's why these people appear. To expose your triggers, and I want you to hear this loud and clear. People show up to expose what you need to learn, your triggers, your wounds, your incomplete parts of yourself. And you have the opportunity to choose to do the work. I talk about the work a lot, but sometimes it can take a long time. I urge you, do the work. And it takes one decision to begin to use and experience life in the way it's meant to be used and experienced. It's like once you realize this, you're no longer a prisoner to your emotions or anything anybody else does. No one can get you because you got you. Does that make sense? And when you've got you, you simply move on from people and things without harboring contempt, anger, and unforgiveness because it just doesn't exist inside you because you've got you. And therefore, you decide how you are going to feel, think, believe, and behave. So knowing that you got your back, you're in complete control. Now, there's one thing that happens when you decide this. This one thing changes the game for you and, frankly, for everyone else that you encounter. And it happens the moment you decide that you got you. Any idea what you think I'm talking about? I'm just curious. I'm imagining I'm, sitting with y'all and you're talking back to me. So when you decide that you got you, what you do, what happens in that moment is that you have boundaries, okay? You develop boundaries, right? So boundaries are the salve to any hurt you have, not jagged boundaries or ones that are flimsy or unstable, but malleable but firm boundaries. Some boundaries need to be absolutes for sure. We all have our hard stop boundaries. I know I do, for sure. But also know that there is really only one thing that people cut people out of their lives for, and it's not really for the reason that you think either. So it's not the reasons that I've mentioned above, even though those sound like they make sense. Those are all logical things, and yes, I've used those justifications too. I'm not saying they're not valid. But the one reason why we shut people out of our lives is because we believe that how they've treated us, it all comes down to the injustice, right? And another word for unjust is unfair. And unjust and unfair exists along a spectrum, right? And it includes everything that I've mentioned, those feelings, betrayal, violation, disappointment, hurt, pain, all of that, everything, right? So whatever it is that provoked you to let someone go in your life, it was because of something they did that was unjust. And that injustice hurt you, offended you, disrespected you, violated your mind, body, and space, perhaps. It was unjust. So remember this, when you cut somebody else out of your life with a desire to never experience that type of behavior from anyone again, you have to, or not, do the work, do the homework from that encounter, that experience, that relationship, or else it doesn't go away outside of you or inside of you. You will experience it again and again and again until you finally get you and until you finally get it. Get the lesson. So when you develop boundaries, the boundaries that you live in certainty with, they stick because you have completed the work around that issue. And there's no longer an emotional trigger associated with it. And that's, y'all, this is really, really big. This is what I want you to hear. If you are still triggered by somebody's behavior, you haven't done the work. Have you ever noticed that, like, you'll have friends in your life or people in your life who aren't bothered by something you're bothered about? Well, they've done the work, whether they've done it consciously or unconsciously. And there are things that you're not bothered by that other people are. And you're like, I don't understand why that's got your panties all in a wad, right? It's because you've done the work, knowingly or unknowingly. So I hope this is making sense. When the emotional trigger is gone, it will not bother you again. So now look at your life and notice those types of boundaries. The types of boundaries that I talk about that just exist, right? They're not jagged, they're not harsh, they don't come with an emotional stimulation. They just are, and you're like pretty chill about them. So if you say you have boundaries but still get emotionally triggered in the same way, it's not a boundary, it's a reaction. And the reaction is not a boundary, it's a defensiveness and a defense mechanism. A clear line of yes or no, white or black, up and down, left or right, that's a boundary. So I urge you to review the relationships that you've cut out of your life and filter which ones you still need to do your homework around. It's okay to cut people out. We need to do that, and I talked about that at the top of today's episode. When people serve their purpose, done, goodbye. I know a lot of people who keep in touch with their exes, and for me, I'm like, I don't need to. There are a couple that I do, simply because I don't harbor anything for them anymore, and they overall are good, kind people. But there are a lot of people that I have experienced in the past, like exes or ex-friends. I'm like, I have no desire, and it's not with contempt. I just have no desire to include you in my life. I don't need you, right? So boundaries allow you to hold space for yourself and feel clear and calm in the process. There's no emotional tie to them. Just like gravity, they just exist. They are of you, not outside of you. So do the work, complete the lesson. Let your boundaries, not reactions, guide your life. And remember, if you have an emotional response to something someone does, you haven't completed the work. People are our teachers. The world and everything in it, every single moment of life, teaches us something. And you may think that's a foolish thing to say, but I'm telling you, every moment, I think the older I get, the more aware I become, and the more constant I am at pausing when things happen, going, oh my God, I wonder why that happened. I become curious. So if you view life that way, I promise you, you will have almost no need to feel worried about what anyone else does to you, because you're like, they're showing up as a representative of something for my benefit. Now, again, experiences happen along a spectrum, and there's some awful experiences that people have had where it's next to impossible to pull something like a silver lining out. Feels next to impossible, and I get that. So I'm not necessarily addressing that, but I am addressing everything else. When you view life and everything else from your computer stalling, to the flat tire on the road, to the light that blinks in your car, or to something somebody else has said, or delivery not coming at the right time, or you go to a job interview and you really want the job but it doesn't work out. Look at that. There's a bigger reason. So view life that way, and you'll have almost no need to feel worried about what anyone else does around you. I'll say to you, but around you, because you determine whether or not you feel victimized or whether it's a perceived direct attack. So why? Because you know you've got you. And when you've got you, you are not hypervigilantly defensive. You don't worry about people saying things about you. You can stand in your certainty without anger, contempt, defensiveness. Like, you're pretty chill. You're pretty good. You're pretty confident about how you move through your days. So I hope this has been helpful. This was an interesting one to think about for me, and especially the piece about the injustice of things. And if you really look at the things that have happened in your life, it all boils down to that. If somebody disrespects you, it's unjust, right? You don't feel it's warranted or it's unfair. And if you look back at your experiences, you will see that injustice is at the root of the emotional reaction that you have. Everything comes down to injustice. So please learn from life. Please, please, please look at everything in your life as a moment of learning. And every single time you stop being triggered, you're taking a step up in your ascension and self-development. So we've kicked off Destined for More, ladies, part 1. We are going to kick off part 2 on Tuesday. And I had some technical snafus, but I was so grateful for the women that showed up, and it felt good to deliver it. But they didn't see my slides, so I'm going to have to figure that next time. But part 2, you could still register, and I'm going to be posting replays once I kind of fix that first recording. The replays will be up for a very, very short time. But you could still register for Destined for More and get access to all the classes, the entire series at https://janisrcohen.com/destined. I wish you a wonderful week, a blessed day, and as always, live intuitively.
Thanks for listening to The Intuitive Therapist. If you like what you heard, the best compliment you can give us is to share this podcast with a friend, and be sure to give us some stars and a favorable review at Apple Podcasts or wherever you listen in.